Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pier Guido Sarti. I'm the Science and Technology Attaché of the Italian Embassy, and I want to sincerely thank those that collaborated with me in organizing the seminar. First and foremost, the two speakers, Marianne Wicks and Marina Carcea. Abby Courtney, who graciously accepted to moderate this debate, this discussion. And of course, I want to thank the Northwest University for the support, and in particular, Professor Balfour for having supported effectively the organization of this webinar. I now kindly ask the Ambassador of Italy, Paolo Cuculi, to give the introductory speech and the opening remarks. Thank you very much, Ambassador Cuculi. The floor is yours.
Grazie, Professore. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody here in South Africa and in Italy. Professor Balfour, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning of the Northwest University, Dr. Carcea and Dr. Wicks, who are our esteemed panelists today from the Research Center for Food and Nutrition of the Council of Agricultural Research and Economics in Italy, and the Center of Excellence for Nutrition, the School of Physiology, Nutrition and Consumer Sciences at the Northwest University. Dr. Abby Courtney, to whom goes our sincere gratitude for accepting to moderate the webinar today. Dear friends, dear attendees, the seminar today has been organized, as you know, within the framework of the 6th edition of the Week of the Italian Cuisine in the World, an initiative of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, whose theme for this year is Tradition and Prospects of Italian Cuisine, Understanding and Optimizing Food Sustainability. The Italian culinary tradition is centered around the basic principles that are known as Mediterranean diet, a model inspired by the habits of Mediterranean countries like Italy, and elements and traditions of other cuisines of the area, such as in the Middle East and North Africa. The main aspects of this diet include a proportionally high consumption of olive oil, legumes, unrefined cereals, fruits, and vegetables, a moderate to high consumption of fish, a moderate consumption of dairy products, basically cheese and yogurt, moderate wine consumption on this depending on the consumer, and a low consumption of non-fish meat products. In a wider sense, in 2010, the Mediterranean diet was added to the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage, where it relates not only to the nutritional recommendations, but more appropriately to the set of skills, knowledge, rituals, symbols, and traditions related to crops, harvesting, fishing, animal husbandry, conservation, processing, cooking, and notably the sharing and consumption of food. The Mediterranean diet, therefore, is beneficial under several perspectives. Not only is it healthy, but is sustainable as well. It promotes biodiversity and food diversity. It protects traditional practices and, in a word, the cultural heritage. The focus of today's seminar, as you will see, is pasta, a basic element of the Mediterranean diet, especially for us Italians, whom individually consume approximately 23 kilos of pasta per year, and this estimate can also be slightly underscored. Pasta sales represents 3.5% of the total sales of Italian food industry and account to slightly more than 5 billion euros. Italy is, needless to say, the world leader in pasta production, with 3.5 million tons produced every year, which is 1/4, 25% of the global world production. Recent studies have shown that Italian pasta exports increased considerably in 2020, despite all the difficulties related to the COVID-19 pandemic, with a consumption that in countries like the USA has increased by 40%. The notion of Mediterranean diet has undergone a progressive evolution in the last 60 years, from healthy dietary pattern to sustainable one, in which nutrition, food, culture, environment, and sustainability all interact into a new model of diet. According to FAO, sustainable diets are those with low environmental impacts, which contribute to food and nutrition security and to a healthy life for present and future generations. In this context, of course, pasta has a lot to offer. In conclusion, I'd like to stress the strict regulations introduced in 2018 in Italy on the traceability and origin of durum wheat used by the Italian pasta industry, which makes our pasta safe for the consumers. The ever-increasing innovation of pasta with the use of raw materials such as legume flours, rice, corn, and protein flour, which makes Italian pasta extremely versatile for different dietary requirements. Finally, the innovation in the production process that is more sustainable and oriented towards circular economy principles. Just to give you an idea, in the last 10 years, the Italian pasta sector reduced by 20% the use of water, by over 20% the emissions of carbon dioxide, and now ensures that almost 95% of the waste products are reused or recycled. Not only is pasta a national traditional product, but has also all those characteristics that make it a food for the future. I hope you and I will learn more on its nutritional values today, and I wish you all an interesting and informative conversation. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Cuculi. Now I'm asking the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning of the University of Northwest University, Professor Balfour, to give us his introductory speech. Thank you very much, Professor Balfour. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pierguido Sarti, and my very gracious acknowledgements of His Excellency the Ambassador to the Italian delegation in South Africa, Dr. Paolo Ciccoli. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this interaction with esteemed colleagues in the area of nutrition, particularly in relation to the role that pasta plays in the diets that have been mentioned, particularly the Mediterranean diet. Also to acknowledge Dr. Marianne Wicks from our Center for Nutrition at NWU. This is one of our research centers of excellence, with particular foci that I think speak to the areas that we will be discussing this afternoon. And then Dr. Marina Garcia, the Vice Director for the Center for Food and Nutrition at the Council for Agricultural Research and Economy. Thank you, Dr. Garcia, also for participating in this important event. And also, as acknowledged, Ms. Abby Courtenay, the registered dietitian, who will act as moderator this afternoon. Abby, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I think it goes without saying, colleagues, that we live in an era characterized by food insecurities. Food security and the sustainability agendas, as adopted by the UN and UNESCO, have been touched on by His Excellency the Ambassador this afternoon. But in the context of that, food insecurity in many of our developing, as well as increasingly also touching on the security of developed economies, we have increasingly to look together at ways in which nutrition can be sustained efficiently and maximally within our communities. And this entails not only a focus on diet and what motivates people to eat, what indeed they do eat, but also looks at those smart choices in relation to those areas of our development as a population, our development as a species, and our future sustainability in communities beyond the urban-rural divide. In South Africa, the scales tipped about 5 years ago in relation to the urbanization rate, which is a rate that is one of the key metrics in relation to the development of industrialized society. And it was at that point that the majority of our population became classified as mostly urban rather than rural. This shift from rural livelihoods characterized mostly by self-sustaining food economies, subsistence farming, and the portion of our economy, of course, devoted to large-scale economic development in the agri-sector. The shift has many implications for South African society going forward, precisely in relation, Dr. Garcia, to that question concerning sustainability of livelihoods and population growth. And so in relation to this special focus on the role of pasta in the Mediterranean diet, and in relation indeed to more diets than simply the Mediterranean diet, it's an apposite, indeed a timely discussion to have in the context of our development. Perhaps even more so in relation to the impact of COVID and the impact that COVID has had on the employment rate in our country, the impact that COVID has had on self-sustained environments where many of the parents or caregivers are not part of the formal economy. So this has also got to be considered. And in that context of looking at the question of one's diet, the diet of communities in the context of employment, the diet of communities in the context of sustainability and in the context of global food insecurity. This seminar discussion comes, as I said, at a timely moment. It comes at a moment, if you like, of fragility and vulnerability globally concerning the future of humanity as species. On that note, I'm very pleased on behalf of Northwest University to have members of our staff from the Center for Excellence in Nutrition represented this afternoon, and we look forward to the engagements of everybody around this virtual table in relation to the important questions that will be posed. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Balfour, for this introductory speech. You have mentioned actually very important area which go beyond the sustainability, but also food security, and probably pasta can really do something also for that. But I will now leave the floor to the expert, and I kindly ask Abby to take the lead and take our two experts in a stimulating conversation. Thank you very much, Abby, once again, from the bottom of my heart. And the floor is yours and your two guests.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited for today's conversation. I think it's going to be incredibly interesting. It's a question we get asked all the time. Can you incorporate pasta in a healthy diet? Pasta has been perceived as being almost like an enemy to a healthy diet for far too long, and we've got carbophobia, which is at an all-time high. And research is actually showing us that pasta consumption is decreasing, and this is it's mind-boggling. We should really focus on what the health benefits of pasta are and how we can actually incorporate it into our diets, but in the healthiest way possible and the most sustainable way possible. So as you've mentioned, we are joined by two wonderful experts, Marina and Marianne, and I'm just going to be guiding them with regards to questions. So they're going to be doing most of the talking, I'm just going to kind of hopefully, keep everybody on track. So I think what we should first start off with, and Marina, I think that this is a question for you. Tell us a little bit about durum wheat. What is it, and how is it different from just regular wheat?
Yes, hello everyone. First of all, let me thank Dr. Sarti for organizing this meeting, and the ambassador and Professor Balfour for their introductions, which already gave us an idea of all the important topics that we are going to touch in this conversation. And I'm based in Roma, in Italy. And it's about lunchtime in Roma, and I would have liked to offer all the participants to this meeting a nice pasta plate so that they could try, taste, and try for themselves what is a pasta plate. But Abby, thank you for posing also the first question. The ambassador mentioned the durum wheat. You asked me, durum wheat, what is durum wheat and whether it's different from the other cereals? Well, I can tell you that durum wheat is fundamental to have a good quality pasta, dry pasta. We are mentioning dry pasta. In Italy, there is a law that requires dry pasta to be made with durum wheat only. Why? Well, because durum wheat is the raw material of choice for a good pasta, in the sense that it has all the technological qualities to guarantee that the quality of the pasta you obtain is up to the standard that we expect it to be. It's a cereal, it's a wheat. The scientific name is Triticum durum. Soft wheat is Triticum, same genus, so they all belong to the same genus, but the kernels are different because the durum wheat has a different texture. It's much harder than soft wheat, and that gives a chance to be milled to give semolina. If you mill soft wheat, you obtain a flour. If you mill durum wheat with roller mills, you can obtain a semolina. What is a semolina? Semolina is a coarser flour, and it's a coarser flour because it has a different texture. As I said, the raw material, the kernel, has a different texture. And usually, durum wheat has also a higher content of gluten proteins that give the kernel that specific hardness so that I can produce semolina. And semolina mixed with water, it's able to give me that specific dough that is required for the traditional pasta industrial process. I don't know whether I was clear enough, but please ask me whether there are some points that I need to clarify.
Well, on my side, I think that was an excellent, sort of clarification of what durum wheat is. I have a question, though, based on what you were saying to us. You mentioned when they take the semolina and they mix it with water, then that obviously forms the pasta dough. Is that how commercial pasta is made? Is it simply those two ingredients, or are they adding anything else to the commercial pastas that are made in Italy?
Dry pasta, which is sold in Italy, doesn't have any other ingredient. By law, there is a law that requires Italian pasta to be made with just durum wheat and water. So it's a very, simple product with just these raw materials, no chemicals, no other ingredient. Then there are special pasta, which can be made with other raw materials, and the ambassador mentioned also other raw materials that we can use to produce what we call special pasta. But the traditional dry pasta The one that you imagine when you think of pasta is just made with semolina and water.
That's amazing. I really think that that's something we need to highlight to consumers, is the fact that it is really just this very simplistic flour or durum wheat flour or semolina and water combination. I think a lot of people in their minds imagine that it's a lot more complicated than that, you know, and imagine that it's this long list of ingredients that's been put in there, but it's actually such a simple, wholesome type of food, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But we must remember that semolina and durum wheat are so specific to pasta. You know, you can't have the same effect. You cannot obtain the same product if you don't use that specific raw material.
Yes, of course, of course. And, you know, while we're talking about, you know, sort of how pasta is made, can you tell us a little bit about how the different shapes are made in the different commercial types of pastas? Because I think that's quite interesting. I think traditionally it's obviously all rolled by hand on, you know, specialized little tools. But, you know, I'm imagining that, you know, if you're doing it in a factory, it's not quite like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it amazes me every time I see also a new shape, because there are a lot of traditional shapes. And I have also a slide with where there are hundreds of shapes depicted, from short ones to long ones, to small ones, to, you know, let's think about butterflies, shells, tubes of any kind, little rices, stars, and there are even new that are being invented by chefs, or you know, to introduce something new in the market. And how are they made? They are made by a physical process, which is well, basically the extrusion process of pasta. How does it happen? Pasta dough, semolina and water, is formed in the kneader. The kneader is just a barrel where the two are mixed by a mechanical blade, to say it in a simple way. They are then driven by the extrusion screw, which is the main part of the extrusion section, to the head of the barrel. So the screw presses the dough, which is quite a dry dough. It's not a soft dough. Semolina and water are mixed in specific amounts, but to produce quite a dry dough. And the screw forces this dough to the head of the barrel, where there is a die. And this die is what creates the shapes, because the holes can be made in a specific way, so that the pressure of the screw, when the dough passes through the die and through these shapes that can be also very elaborated, creates the shape. And then at the exit of the die, there is a sort of a knife, that cuts to the length, to the desired length. And this die is also a very important part of the pasta processing, because it can be a bronze die, or it can be a bronze die or coated with, where the holes are coated with Teflon. And that gives pasta a different texture. The bronze die gives pasta a coarser surface. And, you know, connoisseurs say that pastas made with bronze dye are good for holding the sauce, because they are rougher on the surface. So, you know, you can go into also some more details regarding the shapes and the way they are formed.
That is, again, something I think consumers have to learn more about. It's something that fascinates me, that a lot of us don't know how our food is made, you know, so we don't know what goes in our food, and we don't know the sort of processes that it takes to get, you know, into a packet that goes to our shop, you know. So thank you for that. That was very interesting. Marianne, I actually have a question for you next. And Marina, I'm going to ask you the same question. You know, so when it comes to pasta, so we know South Africans don't necessarily eat a lot of pasta in comparison to our Italian counterparts, but from your sort of research and what you've seen and what you know about our population, what kinds of pasta do you think a lot of our South Africans are having, and what's their favorite way of eating pasta?
Thank you, Abby, for the question. I think I'd also like to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to everyone today. I think it's a very interesting topic, and a lot of us can learn from each other here. So I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here today. So with regards to, you're correct, Abby, if you think of South African diet, pasta is not something that we would say is a staple necessarily in our country. We as South Africans, with regards to starchy foods, we tend to move more towards maize meal porridge and bread and rice. Pasta is definitely something that we as South Africans do consume, but it's not a staple in our country. Now, unfortunately, if we look at the types of pastas that South Africans eat, when we are collecting dietary data, we don't necessarily go into the specific form of the pasta. So whether it is a screw that you are eating or a penne that you are eating, or we just go into, is it pasta that you are eating and with what do you consume your pasta? But I have to say, through interviews and through speaking to patients even, I know that spaghetti and macaroni are the two that we as South Africans consume more often. I did go and have a look with regards to the types of pastas that we've got in South Africa. And like Marina said, when I went to the store and when I had a look at the various types of pastas, we've got numerous types of pastas. We've also got you have to help me with the pronunciation, but the fusilli and the linguine. And so we've got all of these types of dry pastas on our shelves as well. Lasagna. I've got a very big interest with regards to foods directed towards children. And when you were talking about the shapes of foods, we've got a lot of even child-orientated shapes of pasta that we are seeing, little animals and letters of the alphabet that we are seeing. So with regards to dry pasta, we've got numerous amounts of pasta. I think the big difference comes in when we talk about how do we as South Africans consume pasta versus how do the typical Italian pasta dish look like. I think that's where the big difference comes in. But I don't know if I need to go into that now. That will first hand over to Marina regarding the types of pasta.
I think Marianne, will you tell us a little bit more about what South Africans are eating with their pasta? Because I'd like to get a bit of a comparison, where South Africa is and then where traditionals, or where Italians are. Because Marianne and I actually had a bit of a chat about this earlier. I think Italians also must roll their eyes when they see how we eat pizza. How we put all sorts of things on our pizzas, and it's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm imagining it's probably quite similar to the pasta. So Marianne, tell us what South Africans are eating with their pasta.
Okay, so I think exactly like you said, Abby, when I met Marina and Dr. Sharti, when we had our first discussion, I couldn't stop laughing about how they perceived our pasta dishes. So we as South Africans, often we see pasta as, like you introduced, as the devil to our diet. And I think it's more because not of the pasta itself, so the wheat, the durum wheat product, the raw product itself, but more because of two things. More because of, firstly, the portion that we are consuming, I think is a big difference. And then secondly, how do we dress our pasta? So as I said to you, we as South Africans, if I talk to patients, if I talk to people in the research field or participants in the research field, the two that come up majority of the time are the macaronis and the spaghettis. And then we as South Africans like cheese. We like fatty, meaty foods, unfortunately. So the higher the fat content, the higher the meat content, the more a South African would like a pasta dish. So we do macaroni and cheese is something that's a staple in a lot of South African homes. And it differs with regards to how do South Africans prepare it, but it's mainly a white sauce with a lot of margarine or butter and milk or cream, and then a hard cheese, a hard high-fat yellow cheese like a Gouda or a cheddar. Some people maybe add some even eggs to it to try and thicken up the sauce of the macaroni dish. So that's the one that's very popular in South Africa, is macaroni and cheese. And then the other one, as I said, is now a spaghetti bolognese type of thing. But where we as South Africans would have the sauce would be mainly a sauce made of meat, minced beef meat, fried with some vegetables, but it's a big, heavy meat dish. Our other pastas, often we also like to dress them with sausages, with bacon, with creamy sauces. So the more meat and cream in a pasta dish in South Africa, the more popular the dish will be, unfortunately.
You see, and now we have sort of the South African picture. Now we would love to hear how are we supposed to be eating pasta? What are the most popular ways to eat pasta in Italy?
Okay, it was very interesting, but the picture that Marion described to us is not unknown to me, because in many other countries in the world, people use pasta their own way. But if you ask me how we consume pasta in Italy, I'd like to show you a picture so that I show you the kinds of dishes that we usually consume at home. Let me try and share the screen with you. Yes, this one. Tell me, okay, I hope you see it, and I want to show you this one. Can you see it? Okay,
Yes, we can
see.
Now I'll put it on the full screen. Now, here we are. So, I must say that for a healthy diet, the pasta portion, the way of cooking, and the time and amount of sauce matter. And they matter a lot, because they can incredibly change the amount of calories that we eat with your pasta, and transform it from a healthy food into an, borderline unhealthy, very unhealthy food. And that is the picture that pasta detractors usually describe when they want to say that pasta is not healthy, it's a lot of carbs, and it's not good for your diet. Well, first of all, in Italy, there are people who eat a lot of pasta, of course, and as the ambassador mentioned, we managed to eat about 25 kilos every year. But that's because we eat it very often. And we say that 80 grams of pasta is the right portion. Now, if you have a look at the picture here, these are 80 grams of spaghetti. You mentioned, Marion, that spaghetti are very popular in South Africa. They are very popular in Italy as well. And as you can see, this is a very small portion of dry pasta per person. And you shouldn't go above, an adult shouldn't go above. Children should eat even less than 80 grams of dry pasta. But for example, people sometimes eat even less than 80 grams of dry pasta. And 80 grams of dry pasta, when you use a small plate, are able to fill the plate and give you the idea that you're eating enough. Now, then next, you have to cook pasta in boiling salted water. Boiling water, then you toss your pasta in the boiling water, and then you, when it's cooked, it depends on the pasta shape. You can have different cooking times. Then you take it out, and usually we in Italy cook pasta al dente. What does al dente means? Al dente, it means to the tooth. You cannot translate it literally, but it means firm to the bite. And here I have a picture that shows that when pasta is cooked al dente, this is a macaroni that has been opened up. You can still see a layer, a white layer, within your pasta. And that means that the core of your pasta is not entirely cooked. That means that you still have some ungelatinized starch to go into the science in your pasta, and that's good. because it reduces the calories of your pasta. But not everyone likes eating pasta al dente. There are even people who cook it a bit more to make it a bit more cooked, but it has to be firm to the bite. We don't like overcooked pasta, first of all. And then the portion and the types of sauces. As you can see here in the bottom, row, the most popular is the tomato sauce. The tomato sauce for us is made with just tomato, a bit of olive oil, and maybe some onions or garlic. And as you can see in all these dishes, the amount of sauce is limited. It's not, you know, the pasta is not flooded with the sauce. And the cheese or, you know, it's just a sprinkle. We say 1 spoonful, you know, a small spoonful, which is 10 grams of cheese, is enough. Some people like putting more, of course. You know, this is something that goes with everyone's taste. But as a habit, we just give it a little sprinkle on top of our pasta. And then we have other vegetable sauces. Here is a picture of a basil sauce, a pesto, the so-called pesto sauce. Here is aubergine sauce, which is just tomato, aubergines, and basil leaves. And this is called the Norma sauce, typical name. And here we have a richer version of pasta, which in our, traditionally is reserved for the Sunday lunches, for, you know, celebrations, which is minced meat and tomato sauce, the ragu, which is a richer version. We perceive it as a very rich sauce that has to be eaten in moderation, and again, with a small portion of pasta. So even though, as I said, there are individual differences in the liking of less or more pasta, less or more sauce, but this is the picture that you know, you can find in normal Italian households, you know, and that's why even though we tend to eat a lot of pasta, we eat because we eat it maybe every day, maybe at lunch, maybe at dinner, but we don't eat big portions of pasta. Okay.
I think, thank you for that. That, you know, I think that highlights exactly why people have got this poor perception of pasta, because they're eating too much and they're not eating it with the right kinds of, you know, sort of sauces and accompaniments and you know, those kinds of things. It's quite interesting when you mentioned the cheese that you put on your pasta, Marianne. I think that's also quite a big difference here in South Africa. You in Italy, you guys would use Parmesan, and in South Africa we definitely don't use a lot of Parmesan. No.
And I think also the portion size, Abby, that's the big thing, I think, where the difference comes in. And I really want to have, Marina also spoke about, you know, 80 grams of pasta, and then the portion size of the cheese only being 10 grams. So, you know, that's something that's a big difference. So we really need to think about the portion size and how much we are eating. And South Africa, the last few years, we've had the National Nutrition Week, where we've really had a lot of very informative information regarding how do I look at portion sizes. And a good way of looking at it is, you know, just looking at your hand and saying that 80 grams of dry pasta or portion size of pasta is actually the amount of pasta, let me just get my camera right, that would fit into the palm of my hand. And then if I'm looking at cheese, I should think about my thumb, and it's actually the size of my thumb that is the amount of cheese that I should actually consume in a sitting. So I think it all boils down to the portion size, and then also what you said, how do I dress my pasta?
I think that nicely leads me actually into my next question. You know, Marianne, if you know, now with a little bit more information from what Italians are doing, how can we as South Africans make our pasta healthier? How can we create a healthy meal out of pasta?
Thank you, Abby. You know, that's something that we can really do. They started with the Mediterranean diet, and the key elements of the Mediterranean diet forms part of, that it consists of. And then, then pulling it back to sustainability, but it all goes about small changes we can make that makes a massive difference. And then I think to start off, for we as South Africans, the first thing would be, as I said, the portion size. So look at the amount of pasta that I'm consuming. So sticking to that 80 grams of the carb sauce that I'm eating, the pasta that I'm eating. And then really going and thinking about, how do I dress my pasta? Because pasta gives us a fantastic opportunity to really get in really key foods that contribute towards our health. I always, when people ask me about what is a healthy food and what is a healthy diet, I always pull them back to say, but what do you want to achieve with a healthy diet? And it's to promote health and to prevent disease. So we need to go back, when we think about the pasta sauces, we need to think, what foods are actually promoting my health, or giving me nutrients or food components that are assisting me in fighting disease and assisting me in having a better life. And we all know, all of us know what these foods are. It's fruits and vegetables, lean meats, healthy fats like the olive oils. So when we are building these dressings for our pasta, we need to pull back to that, to think of, what am I going to add to this dish to promote my health and to give me components that will better my future? So I think the big thing is for us South Africans to pull it back to making it more vegetable based, to assist us in getting that Mediterranean diet, or the key components of a Mediterranean diet is fruits and vegetables and healthy fats. So it's, when you are doing your sauce, add as many vegetables as you can to it. So start with adding your onions, tomatoes, aubergine, or marrows. Even if you're thinking, I spoke about the spaghetti bolognese that we South Africans really like. Instead of just going for meat and a tomato and onion tin, add whole vegetables to it, like grating baby marrows in it, grating carrots in it, adding the aubergines, we can do that. So that's a key way. And in that, you automatically consume more vegetables, which automatically increases your fiber intake and your key micronutrient intake. So I think that's a simple way of doing it, is going for as much vegetables as you can in a dish, and then really looking at the amount of pasta to go to that 80 grams. And then if you think of the meats and the hard fats like the cheeses, also really looking at firstly the type that I'm using, so going for a leaner meat, and then looking at the portion size. So if I'm talking about a leaner meat, I'm talking about something like chicken without the skin, so a nice chicken breast. Fish, we as South Africans tend to move away from fish, but that's something that we can really learn from our Italian counterparts and our Mediterranean friends, is to use fish in more creative ways. We only think about using it as fish and chips, but something that's a key component in South African diet, like pilchards and sardines, we can easily add that to our pasta dishes as well. And then we are getting in our healthy fats. Otherwise, just going for the vegetarian-based, vegetable-based sauce with a spoon of olive oil, I think that is a really simple, easy way. We're scared to experiment, and we really need to challenge ourselves and to experiment and to try and get our food as colorful as possible, with as many different food components as possible.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of people, consumers, are terrified to experiment in the kitchen. We are worried, we kind of stick to what we know. My mom taught me this recipe and I'm just going to carry on cooking it for the rest of my life. And we need to, expand our palates a little bit. Marina, I actually wanted to ask, on the back of what Marianne said, so this is something I'm actually just curious about. When you are eating 80 grams of pasta, are you perhaps eating a side salad with it, or what are you adding to that meal, or do you or everybody typically feel full on 80 grams of pasta with that sort of vegetable sauce?
Well, I saw also in the chat someone was asking, but you usually, we know that you have pasta as a first course, that maybe you have a second course, maybe you have a third course, maybe you have also a cake, or and you drink a little bit of wine. and so on and so forth. Well, yes, but that's for celebrations. In the normal everyday life, we just pasta. If people have pasta, they tend not to eat something else. But people have pasta with the sauce that can be also very rich in vegetables. And for example, during the summer, pasta salads are very common. Which are cold pasta. You can cook pasta beforehand, and then you can use pasta with all sorts of vegetables. Our best oil, of course, we have olive oil, so we tend to use olive oil to toast our salad. But there are other good oils. If you don't have olive oils, there is groundnut oil, there is sunflower oil. I mean, you can use other oils which are not exactly the same, but they are healthy oils. And then we tend to use fruit.
There we go.
The dish of pasta.
Yes.
That there can be also pieces of meat like a ragu sauce or the lean meat like a chicken breast, which is very popular, turkey breast, something like that. And then you eat some fruit, and that's it. Or you can have a piece of meat, and that's it. For everyday lunch, you don't tend to have the first course, the second course. Maybe there are some people who have that, but
it's not the majority.
If you are on a healthy diet, or if you want to keep your weight, you don't go into that pattern of eating first, second, third, and fourth course.
I love that, sort of having a fruit after a meal. It's, we all know the saying, the fruit is nature's sweets, and so it's, you feel like something sweet after a meal, but then instead of reaching for something that's processed or very high in added sugars, we go and we reach for something that's going to, again, like Marianne said, contribute to our health and increase our micronutrient intake and, just in general be, so much healthier for us. Okay, great. And then my next question is again for Marianne. Sorry, I feel like I'm making you talk a lot today. Well, both of you actually. Marianne, what I wanted to ask is, when it comes to consuming enough carbohydrates, what can we expect? Are carbohydrates? Tell us a little bit about carbohydrates as an energy source, and what happens when people aren't having enough or having too much? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so thank you. So carbohydrates, and I think that's why people perceive them as the devil, but it's the main source of energy in our diet. That's how we get energy. That's our body's fuel. And it's the first thing that our body needs to function for everything, all of your organs, your whole body to function, to grow, for your immune system. We need carbohydrates as our energy source. And carbohydrates we find in numerous foods. Pasta is a great source of carbohydrates because, as Marina also said in the beginning, because it's mainly only consisting of wheat, which is a carbohydrate source. So, or only because which is a carbohydrate. So, we find this carbs in our grains, even our fruits and vegetables contain carbohydrates, and then also dairy foods such as milk and yogurts and cheeses. They've all got a form of carbohydrate in them that our body uses as energy. So that's why if we look at these fad diets or people really wanting to lose weight quickly, the moment that they start cutting down their carbohydrates, they start losing weight because now the body's not getting its main source of energy. So then the body tends to revert back to what is available, and that is now either protein or fat. So depending on where you go with your diet, if you now are, cutting your carbs very low and you're going for a higher fat diet, then often the body would then start breaking down the fat and produce ketones, which then would form the energy source, would be the new energy source. Which is fine in the beginning because now my body's breaking down fat, or it's using fat as its key energy source. I'm losing weight, I'm feeling good, but it's not my body's first priority in terms of energy source. And now my body needs to adapt to this. So often what happens is the people, they start getting the weight loss, but it can be because of the fat breakdown. And another reason can also be because of fluid loss, because of now the glucose, not using glucose. There's a whole process. I'm not going to go into too many detail regarding that, but that can also be a key reason why. But also what happens then is this body starts going into ketosis, and people sometimes complain when they go on these strict carbohydrate, very low carbohydrate diets. So if you talk about a very low carbohydrate diet, you're talking about a diet that is less than 50 grams of carbohydrates per day, which is very low. So then you'll use your fats and your proteins as your main energy source. They start getting something we call keto flu. And that's when they start feeling dizzy. So sometimes people would complain of dizziness, because remember now you are depriving your body of its main energy source, glucose. Yes, it can get energy from ketones, but the body's not used it. It's not its main preferred energy source. So then they start getting dizziness, fatigue. Some people also complain of nausea sometimes. And then a lack of sleep is also something that's often in these low keto or these ketogenic diets. And then also upset stomach. Mm-hmm. So the upset stomach makes 100% sense, because now because you're not eating carbohydrates, you're still hungry. So you're replacing it with proteins and fats. Mm-hmm. And so now the high fat diet can cause your stomach to feel upset. And then as well as because you're taking away carbohydrates, as I mentioned in the beginning, a key source is now the whole grain foods, fruits and vegetables. You are not getting the essential fiber that you are needing. So then they also start getting constipation. So it's an upset stomach in the sense of high fat, but then also limited fiber intake. So that is, I'm answering your question, and I went into a lot of detail.
Yes, no, that.
But so that's what happens and that's why people, fad dieters really run towards this low carbohydrate diet, because they get the rapid weight loss because they're depriving the body of the main energy source. The issue constantly is, and I, if you go to research, often it comes up, yes, the ketogenic diet or the low carb diet does aid weight loss. But if you go and look in the research, similar findings to going to a low fat diet, to going to an energy restricted diet as well. So one hasn't been superior than the other, but the problem with the ketogenic diet or, cutting your carbs that much is sustainability, in the sense of, can the individual continue on this diet? Because that is a healthy diet. It's a diet that I can continue for the rest of my life. Yes. I need to do this continuously for it to be successful. And as I said, if we think back on what is healthy, what am I depriving my body of, and what am I taking away that builds my body and actually contributes towards my health? And I think that's how we need to look at food, is what is it giving me in fighting disease and preventing disease?
No, 100%. I think all of us can agree that, yo-yo dieting is rife. Everybody that I know has been on a diet, myself included. It's terrible. It's the new pandemic, and we need to move away from that and start looking at what we're eating and rather focus on, like you said, you're fueling our bodies with foods that are going to be healthy for us, but that we will also be able to sustain in the long run.
Yes.
As you were busy talking, you mentioned, one of the nutrients that may be lacking if we start to cut carbohydrates out of our diets is fiber. And we all know that, fiber plays an incredibly important role when it comes to gut health. But one of the effects that fiber has is that it also obviously helps to decrease the glycemic
index.
The rise in blood sugar when we're eating carbohydrates. So I want to touch a little bit more on the concepts of glycemic index and glycemic load, because some of the consumers may see this on packaging. They might see it advertised on something and be a bit confused, not really sure, about what this is. So I think, Marina, will you help us with that question? Let us know, tell us a little bit about glycemic index and where pasta fits in with regards to this.
Yes, I will, because when we say carbs, not all carbs are the same. We have several kinds of carbs, and we have to check the physiological effects of all the different kinds of carbs. Let me share a picture again, so that will be easier for me to explain. This is the one we saw. Okay, here we are. Oh, no, sorry. Here we are. Now, let's have a look at this picture. And here I've put three different sources of carbs. Two come from wheat. And by the way, in Italy, we produce also, in southern Italy especially, bread from durum wheat. The semolina, yes, the semolina is milled again. Once you produce the semolina, there are mills that mill the semolina again to produce a finer flour that is used for making bread. And those breads are typical of southern Italy. They are very good. They have a very yellow color, very pleasant yellow color, and they have a characteristic that they stale less than soft wheat bread. We don't know. We did a lot of studies on that, but we don't know why. But anyway, the evidence is that they stale less, and it's becoming very popular, and it has become very popular also durum wheat bread, especially for the color and you know and the taste. But going back to our picture, here we have 100 grams of bread, which, as far as carbohydrates, is more or less equivalent to 80 grams of pasta, our portion of dry pasta. And maybe it's good to mention that once you boil these 80 grams of dry pasta, it becomes 200 grams of cooked pasta. So it's, it's quite a fulfilling portion. And it's more or less equivalent to 60 grams of sugar. But when I eat these three different carbohydrate sources, they cause different glycemia increase rates. And this is very important for my health. And if I have a look at this graph here, where I have the blood glucose levels against the digestion time, and conventionally, in order to have this standard, this parameter, which is the glycemic index, I take 2 hours of digestion. I can see that here I have two curves, one with a low hump and one with a high hump. And then if I have a look at the foods that are depicted along these curves, I can see that in the high hump, I have corn, I have ice cream, for example, I have chips, I have biscuits, I have cakes, I have potatoes, I have jasmine rice, very refined rice, watermelon, white bread. But if I go to the other curve, I can see that here I find basmati whole grain rice. I can see vegetables, some vegetables, lentils, legumes. I can see pasta. I can see whole grain bread, oats, oranges. They're all along this curve. That means that once I eat them, they don't give me a glucose spike that it's considered very bad for my health. Because if I have that every day, I might become prone to developing some illnesses that then can, damage my well-being status. So this is the glycemic index of food, and it's somehow a way of classifying the foods according to their impact on glucose. Mind you, this is an index, and it has to be, there is a standard way of obtaining this index, and usually it's done, these curves are done against a standard, which is the white bread, or can be sugar, glucose, etc. And it's something that belongs to the food. It doesn't belong to the diet. It belongs to a specific food. We have to say that. So if I eat, but the same food, for example, if I eat white rice, it becomes a high glycemic index. If I have whole grain rice, it becomes a low glycemic index, because also the way the food is processed affects the glycemic index. So it is nothing to do with the food itself as a category, but also we have to have a look at the way foods are processed in order to be able to understand whether it's a high glycemic index or a low glycemic index. And the glycemic load is derived from the glycemic index, so it's another index which is considered more appropriate. But again, the whole idea is what happens when I eat a carb-rich food, because definitely pasta is a carb-rich food, even though we mustn't forget that it has quite an interesting amount of proteins, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk about proteins as well.
That is actually my next question. So if you want to tell us a little bit more about the proteins that are found within the semolina, and then obviously the pasta that gets made after that. Tell us more about that.
Okay, I'll share then again another picture. And in the meantime, I had a look at the chart, and I saw some interesting comments and observations. For example, Marion rightly said, well, legumes are very good to use with your pasta. And I must say that the combination of pasta and legumes is very popular, very traditional in Italy, especially in the winter season. And it's very traditional and very interesting. We use lentils, we use chickpeas, we use beans with pasta, especially with minestra. I mean, minestra for us, it's a liquid media where you cook your pasta and you keep it liquid, so plenty of water, and you cook your vegetables in this water as well. So it's something liquid, because so far we've mentioned spaghetti, macaroni, and something which for us is not liquid, but pasta can be used also within liquid foods.
Like a broth almost.
Like a broth, yes, that's right. Something, yeah, that's right. We have vegetable broth, for example, and you can use your pasta in that. But going back to your question, I want to, show you this, for example. This is a picture of one of our experiments. And it tells us something about the pasta proteins. In order to qualify, to give a value to the protein in a food, we use an index, which is the chemical index, which is based on the relative amount of amino acids that you find in that kind of proteins. Now, amino acids are the bricks that make up the protein. And as you know, there are some amino acids which are called essentials, which we cannot do without. We have to find them in the food we eat. And the value of a protein is based on the relative amount of those essential amino acids. So here in this picture, in this graph, we have a list of essential amino acids: valine, tryptophan, threonine, cysteine, methionine, phenylalanine, tyrosine, lysine, leucine, and isoleucine. And unfortunately, even if pasta has between 10 and 12% of proteins, so it's not a low amount of proteins. Those proteins are not of high quality. We know that the best protein quality we can find in eggs or in proteins from animal origin, or products from animal origin like milk, derivatives, milk products. But meat definitely is the best according to protein quality. But in order to improve this quality, I just have to add a little bit of another food that's rich, for example, in lysine in this specific case, because lysine is the limiting amino acid in pasta. And if I have a look at the purple bar here, this is the amount that I can find in pasta, so it's definitely limited. But here I have another bar, which is the bar of the Parmesan cheese that I want to add to my pasta, and which is above 100, which is the limit for the perfection, so to say. So this is well above because it's a food of animal origin. But if I add 10 grams, I mean a spoonful of sprinkle Parmesan, but it can be any cheese, or it can be any food of animal origin, or it can be fish. For example, there are typical dishes which are, especially in southern Italy, pasta with fish. It's a tradition, or we have pasta with seafood, for example, which is very popular. In that case, as you can see, the yellow bar tells me the value of the combination of pasta and the Parmesan cheese. With 10 grams, I can easily increase and double the chemical index of pasta. So when I eat a dish of pasta, and I have to consider the combination that I'm trying in order to improve the value of the nutritional value of my pasta. And definitely, if I use meat, if I use cheese, a little bit, just a little bit, or if I use seafood, if I use fish, well, I'm just having a perfect dish as far as protein quality is concerned.
Absolutely. Look, I think, again, I default to South Africa because that's what I know. But I think a lot of people believe we have to eat huge portions of protein in order to, get in our essential amino acids for the day. And the truth is you don't. We really don't need these massive steaks. And, in South Africa, we have what they call braai. So we braai a lot and, it's like slabs of meat everywhere. We don't need that. And simply just 10 grams of Parmesan cheese is enough to transform a pasta meal, from an essential amino acid point of view. And when we talk about protein, I guess, the most popular thing at the moment to talk about around protein is sustainability, because we know that specifically beef, for example, is not really good for our planet. We're eating a lot of it anyway. So Marianne, let's start with you. How can we reduce the amount of meat that we're having in our diets, because we know that that's having such a big impact, on our environment?
Thank you, Abby. I think, especially for us as South Africans, meat is so part of our culture, and it's for all of us. It's for South Africans across the board, rural, urban, high income, low income. South Africans like meat. If you look at the dietary data and the research that's coming out, we're seeing a big the nutrition transition that's happening in South Africa, and unfortunately, this shift means that we are consuming a lot of meat, animal proteins, specifically animal proteins, refined carbohydrates, and that our fruit and vegetable intake is decreasing for the adult population and the child population, which is shocking. I know now you need to talk about sustainability, but that's why I want to tie on to this now, is that firstly, what we as we need to do is we need to look at the amount of animal proteins that we are consuming, or animal-derived foods that we are consuming. Something typical in South African diet, as I said, is the amount of meat, specifically red meat. We as South Africans prefer chicken and red meat, and lower down the line comes the fish and the pork, and definitely our plant-based protein intake is really, really low in South Africa. So that's something that we really need to look at, is the portion size firstly, and the amount of times that we consume meat. Now with sustainability in the context of environmentality, we've seen a lot of new terms coming out and a lot of new diets coming out. We talk about the planetarian diet and the flexitarian. And this is now where that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to try and reduce your impact on green grasses, go and be a vegetarian. It just means that maybe be a flexitarian or be a planetary health diet, is to really take cognizance of how often do I eat these animal-derived foods, and to really try and say, but maybe I can start by saying 1 meal a day, 1 meal a week, 1 day a week, I will go vegetarian and I will explore with vegetarian dishes. And then maybe for the rest of the week, I will look at the amount of animal-derived foods that I'm consuming. So trying is as you know, sticking to that guide that we talk about, our portion size for meat is, you know, going for your palm size. We as South Africans, we go for the whole hand. And then also looking at the thickness of the meat. I remember when I practiced as a dietitian, still seeing patients, often the South African men will tell me, but then I'll just have this thick piece of meat. And no, we need to, you know, go to the as thick as your hand and as big as the palm of your hand. So going and saying that I'll maybe go and have 1 day, I will go a week, I will go vegetarian. The rest of the week, I will try and look at the portion size. And then definitely experimenting. We had a lot of, you know, I can see in the chat, and Marina also spoke about it, are plant-based proteins. Really exploring plant-based proteins. How can I use this? They've got a very lower impact, much lower impact on the environment. They are cheap. They are really, really cheap. They come with fantastic source of fiber. It's a good way of bulking up a meal is by adding lentils and chickpeas and, you know, really exploring legumes and beans and exploring them. And a pasta dish is a great way of really exploring and pushing the boundaries here. I earlier spoke about play around in the kitchens, explore, play with dishes, you know, force yourself, or not force yourself, but really challenge yourself. I think that's a better word to use, is to say challenge yourself and try and see how can I do this. So in the context of environmental sustainability, I would say play around with that. I like the term flexitarian. Say one meat-free day a week, and then going in back to the plant-based proteins, the legumes, and really trying and exploring with them.
100%, you know, and, you know, while we're on that topic of sustainability, Marina, if we were to incorporate 1 meat-free day and, you know, just start working on reducing our portions of meat, does that go quite a long way with regards to helping the planet? You know, are we making a difference with regards to that if we start looking at what we're eating?
Well, yes, I think so. We have to be always mindful of what we eat. And that's also something that I would recommend. I mean, a meal is something that I do because I have a need to eat, but I have to eat also with my mind and think, when I choose something to eat, what am I choosing? Is making a difference to the planet health. And I want to, again, to share with you another picture, because I think it's a very interesting one if you haven't seen it yet. Here I am. Sorry, is the next one? No, okay. The next one. Okay, this is it. This is a very nice picture that has been produced by the Barilla Foundation and Research Unit on Nutrition, Diabetes and Metabolism. Of course, Barilla, it's a big pasta maker in Italy, so you must think that they are a bit biased. But I had a look at the report, and this picture has come out of a lot of research and comparisons, and it makes sense actually. Here, you know, we can see the pyramid. The pyramid, as many of us maybe know, is a way of showing in a very simple way the proportion of food that we need to eat to stay healthy, and it gives us an immediate idea of the amount of foods that I can consume daily. And there are layers in my pyramid. This is the pyramid for the Mediterranean diet. We are talking pasta, so I mean, pasta is typical, is is actually a sort of symbol of the Mediterranean diet. That's why I choose this pyramid. But if you go and have a look at the site of this Barilla Foundation, they've done the same exercise, trying to produce also pyramids for the African diet, for the Asian diet, for the North American diets, for different environments. But the idea is that foods can be stratified in layers depending on, based on the amount of nutrients that they can provide. And depending on their positions in the layers, you have foods that you can eat frequently and in larger amounts, going from the bottom to the top, and foods that you need to eat occasionally, if you want to stay in good health. And in the Mediterranean diet, as you can see at the bottom of the pyramid, there are fruits, there are vegetables, but there are also whole grains and foods made of whole grains. Well, the next layer is pasta. Pasta is not the bottom. As I said, you need to be careful with the amount you eat. If you eat it at lunchtime, you don't eat it at dinner time, so you cannot eat it so often. But you can see also olive oil, nuts, etc. But if you go, as you go upwards, you can find the different food categories, and at top of this pyramid, you can see the red meat, cake and pastries, animal fats, and tropical for the Mediterranean situation. Of course, anyone has its tropical foods. Maybe pasta is a tropical food for you. But as you can see, red meat and processed meats are at the top of this pyramid, which means that you have to eat them occasionally, not at every meal, possibly not every day. But they've done another exercise, and they've tried to see the life cycle assessment of all these food, and which is the study of the entire life cycle from the raw material to the end of life. And they've determined a number of indicators, and the main indicator is the carbon footprint of these foods. So the number of carbon dioxide emissions that we know are not good for the health of our planet. And if you have a look at this picture, the pyramid can be reversed exactly, because the foods that have a low impact on the environment are in the tip of the pyramid, and they are vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes, low and high glycemic index foods. And amongst them, we can find also rice, and we can find also pasta. So they're all high and low glycemic index, as we said before. But as I go towards the bottom of the pyramid in this case, and I see the impact increases, I can see that unfortunately at the bottom of the pyramid I can find the red meat, but that's because of the emissions of red meat. That's a fact. I mean, we have to face this reality. So I think that if you use more in your diet of foods being in the tip of the pyramid in this case, well, that's good for the environment as well, because you don't contribute to the CO2 emissions and other, negative aspects that impact on the life of our planet.
It's so incredibly interesting that, the foods that are good for us are also good for our planet, and so we should be focusing more, like you said, on, the fruits and the vegetables and the whole grains and those kinds of things. A very interesting question has come in from Linda. She wants to know if salami and prosciutto are considered to be processed meats. Unfortunately, Linda, yes.
So interesting.
Yes, unfortunately they are. In fact,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't recommend to eat prosciutto and salami, at every meal. But yes, they are very good. And again, the amount makes a difference because
Exactly.
with the prosciutto, a slice can be enough. If I eat 10 slices, maybe I'm contributing more to my bad health and to the bad health for the planet. Well, to say it in a very simple way.
Can I
Agreed. I
quickly
mean,
jump in
sorry,
there?
go, Maria.
Sorry, can I quickly jump
Yes.
in there? I just want to say, yes, in terms of processing. So the meat, those prosciutto and the salami would be considered as a processed meat, or actually a ultra processed or highly processed meat. And interestingly enough, pasta, because it's mainly just durum wheat that's been milled, would be considered as a whole food. So if you think in the health context and in environmental health context, again, the pasta comes out as a whole food with a lower impact on the environment and a lower negative impact on overall health compared to your highly processed foods like the prosciutto and the salami.
Yeah, but
I think that's
animal origin, unfortunately, is because the processing might also be a very simple one. You let them to dry and then you put salt on them, is the raw material that you use that made an impact on the environment. I mean, has come out of these studies, people might say, well, don't agree with that. But anyway, the studies tell us that.
I think it's all just about, and I know a lot of people give me slack for saying this, but, they tell me I'm sitting on the fence, but it really all boils down to everything in moderation. It's have it, but don't have a lot. Don't have it every day. I know one of my favorite ways to eat prosciutto is with melon, so you have 1 or 2 slices of melon with some on it. It's delicious. You don't have too much, get a little bit of extra vitamins and minerals in from your fruits, so I think it's all about those dietary patterns and what you're including in your entire diet rather than, just saying this is healthy or that is unhealthy. What are you eating it with and, what else are you eating on a regular basis, which makes a big difference.
We don't eat food in isolation. Sorry, we don't eat food in isolation. We eat food as combined. So it's all about with what am I eating it and how am I eating it? And it goes back to that simple old rule of 80-20. Try and be good and try and do the best option 80% of the time. And then that 20% of the time, or that even if it's a meal, if you look at the meal and you say 80% of the foods are considered to be helpful and 20% of the meal might not be that helpful, but it's all that balance and it's that 80-20% game that we are playing.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Well, ladies, those are the questions that I had for you today. I wonder if you'd give me a few moments. I just want to run through the questions that we have here on the side. If anybody listening has any extra questions, pop them into the chat now so that we can get our experts to answer them for you.
I tried to answer some of them along the way.
I see. So I see, Marina, the one that you did say was, if the durum wheat, gosh, where did that one go now?
There were very interesting questions, by the way, because...
Here we go. One of the questions said, on the label on my pasta, it says product of Italy and it says durum wheat semolina pasta. So as Marina said, obviously that does mean that it is the durum wheat pasta, which is great. I see we have some Italians that are living in South Africa. I hope you guys are enjoying it here. I see you guys have been answering these questions. That's great. Yeah. One question I got privately asked was, how could pasta be promoted as a cheaper dish in comparison to rice or millipap here in South I It's quite an interesting one. I've actually been trying to think of the answer. Yeah, well, we've been going through.
I actually want to, when I thought now, when you asked about the types of pasta in the beginning, and we were talking a lot about now food components, I just want to jump back, and I think it would also go the cheaper side. It depends on what do you choose, because I went and exploring when I looked at the types of pasta. So I was also looking at the shapes, but I also looked at, the type of pasta in the sense of what is it made from? What do we see in South Africa? So majority of the time, it is our durum wheat pasta, that the dry pasta that we are seeing in our shelves. And then you get the plain one and you get the whole wheat one. So with regards to a price point of view, the original, more refined, whiter one is much cheaper actually in certain stores or certain products compared to your whole wheat one. So I found that, the whole wheat one can be between 30 to 100% more than your standard. I looked at spaghetti or macaroni. Those were the two that I compared in terms of price. But then, it comes at the expense of the fiber. So the fiber in your whole wheat pastas can easily be 4 times more than the fiber content of a plain pasta. But as I said, then you're talking about a 30 to 100% increase in price. So if we took it back to price, I did go and look at the price of rice and the price of bread and the price of maize meal. So unfortunately, in South Africa, the price of those foods, if you look at a portion size of you, is cheaper in comparison to pasta. But I think it's going back to the type of pasta that you are choosing, but then it comes at the lack then of your fiber content, unfortunately. So I think then, the way of increasing the fiber can then be like we spoke about now, adding your legumes to it, adding your vegetable sources to it, then you will automatically bulk up your fiber content of those foods. So just interesting. I also saw we had gluten-free. We've got a lot of gluten-free pasta that's made of a cornstarch, but that's again also more expensive. And then we have got lentil pasta as well in South Africa, made of pasta made of lentils, but that is a whopping 300% more in terms of price comparison to your durum wheat pasta. So with regards to a price point of view, I think, it also goes about maybe locally, going more for locally produced pastas. We've got a lot of import pastas, so maybe locally produced pastas. But I think definitely going to the type of pasta that you choose and the wheat that it's made of will definitely contribute towards having it more affordable.
Yeah. Miriam, while you were talking about the whole wheat pasta, a question came in. Do you have the fiber difference between regular durum wheat pasta and the whole wheat pasta?
Yes, I do. So I think it would depend from manufacturer to manufacturer and product to product, but roughly, if you look at 100-gram serving, a normal standard durum wheat pasta would have about 2 grams of fiber per 100-gram serving. Your whole wheat pasta, durum wheat pasta, would have 7.8 grams per 100 gram. So if we are looking at evaluating what is a source of fiber and what is a good source of fiber, the guidelines say that between 3, so if it's got 3 grams of fiber per 100 gram, we can say that this is a good source of fiber. If it's got more than 5 grams per 100 gram, we would consider it as a high fiber food. So then it puts a normal standard pasta. Yeah, then the whole wheat would be your good source of fiber. And as I said, depending on the store where you're buying, I did find that at certain stores, the whole wheat and the durum wheat can be similar in price. But the majority of the time, I found that the whole wheat would be between 30 and 100% more than the standard one. But as I said, you can easily increase the fiber content by adding legumes or vegetables. Then automatically you will bulk up the fiber content of the dish.
Agree. Marina, I see that you've answered the resistant starch question. I was just thinking about that. I thought instead of, so the question for anyone who's not looking in the chat was, should we be cooking our starch, cooling it down, and then heating it up again in order to increase the amount of resistant starch?
I've done a lot of research on resistant starch because, at a certain point, a lot of papers came out saying that, there was a lot of resistant starch, but I haven't seen it. Of course, it depends also how you cooked your pasta, how much you cooled it, how much time you gave your starch to gelatinize and crystallize again. but then once you warm it up, it reverts back to being gelatinized. So actually, it doesn't add that much. If you want to have a lot of resistant starch, just cook your pasta al dente. In that case,
yeah. And I was just going to say, also cooking it and cooling it and reheating it and trying to figure all that out sounds very complicated, you know, and we're all about sustainability. We want stuff to be easy. We don't want it to be more difficult to give us health benefits.
You know, in Italy, there is even a very traditional dish, which is it used to be very popular, you know, when I was a child, which is eggs with cooked, and you know, once you have leftovers, pasta leftovers, and that become cold, you keep them in the fridge, and then you beat your eggs, and you pour your beaten eggs over the pasta, and you cook it in a frying pan, and that's a perfect tortilla.
Oh, sounds good. That sounds amazing. You see, we all need to start being a little bit more creative with our leftovers because we're going to decrease food waste.
And use your pasta and your pasta leftovers, you know, and that's still good for your health.
There we go. Like we said, good for the environment and good for us.
Yeah.
Ladies, I think that is all the questions that are in the chat for today. Gosh, I don't know about everybody, but time just flew. I absolutely can't believe that we've been chatting for about an hour and a half almost. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I don't know, I learned a lot. So I'm really hoping that everybody listening has also learned a lot. Can I hand over to, does anybody want to say final goodbyes?
Well, definitely I enjoyed being with you all. And so I wish to thank you, Abby, you've been perfect, and Marion, and Pier Guido, who's appearing right now, for having given me this opportunity to chat with you all.
Yeah, from my side as well, I would really like to thank the organ. Thank you, Abby and Marina. It's been a pleasure. I learned so much regarding pasta from you, and I really enjoyed the comparisons of the two countries and everything. So it's been an honor to be here, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Agree. Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you, Marina. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Abby, in really a very interesting afternoon. I actually am thinking about having the three of you again maybe next year for a second webinar because there are a lot of sustainability, for example, as something that came out. So we will not focus on pasta probably, but about sustainability and the diets that South Africans and Italians basically have. I don't know if you hear me, but my connection is very bad.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Fantastic. Okay. And well, then I just deactivated my video just to give it a helping hand. And anyway, thank you again very much from the embassy. Once again, thanks to the CREA and the Northwest University for participating in this highly scientific debate, but also made in a very understandable and communicable way, which is exactly what our intentions were. So thank you very much, and watch out for the next episode.
Thank you.
There we go. I think, Shane, we've lost him.
You lost me.
Well,
Thank you, everyone.
I think what
Thank
we
you
need
for
to do is
participating.
we need to organize the next one in Italy. So Marianne and I
Yes,
will
yes.
see you guys there in Rome.
We will love that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We can have a
Keep
cooking course as well.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh my goodness.
yes,
You're speaking my
yes.
language. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, Abby.
Bye.